Hey everybody! Oh god, yeah, I bet you didn't think I was coming back, did you? Well, today, and probably for Tuesday, is going to be like a bunch of these. Like, I pretty much sat down and said I'm doing at least 3 of them and trying to get them all out today. Might go on the 4. I don't know. See what I feel like after the third one. Fuck it, let's go!
I was sure there were some elements of the conversation that I would do well to hear, particularly anything regarding us or Steelhoove's mission. But there was probably more than a bit of a discussion about internal politics and current affairs within the Steel Rangers.
Yeah,
Such
that's
things were
good
none of my
shit.
business, and after having entered one of Steelhoove's memories without permission, I really didn't want to stick my hoof into his affairs uninvited so soon again.
No.
Furthermore,
Lame.
I found that I really didn't want to know. The Steel Rangers were distasteful.
Yeah.
Steelhooves was a Steel Ranger, not just a former member who still wore the armor because, for some reason I didn't quite understand, he couldn't remove it, but a current and still active part of the organization. A Star Paladin at that. Which, although I didn't quite know what that meant, sounded quite impressive.
It does.
Between this
You gotta
side
admit
trip and
that.
the memories of his memory orbs, I was beginning to learn a lot about my newest companion. Well, newest four-hoofed companion. And I found I could accept most of it, although not always easily. I felt I could trust him, with certain parameters, and
Yeah.
call him my friend. But I did not envy his karma, and I was apprehensive about where his loyalties would fall if the hooves met the apple tree. Learning about him had also meant learning about the Steel Rangers. I was interested in them, as they were connected to Steel Hooves, and to Applejack, a mare in that special circle of friends whom Spike had personally known, and whom I had grown to care about regardless of the centuries between us. The notion of defenders still sworn to the values of Applejack was like a light in the sea of darkness that the equestrian wasteland often seemed to be. But the Steel Rangers themselves, or at least a great many of them, struck me as little better than well-equipped, more principled raiders. They didn't go about raping and torturing. No bodies hung mutilated from their walls. But they had no compunction about just sitting back and letting ponies suffer and starve and die when they had the technology to do some good. They were like Spike, only without the noble and self-sacrificing reason that justified their actions. I frowned and turned my thoughts away from the internal contemplation and back into the hallway.
Nah.
Having decided not to eavesdrop, I slipped my earbloom in one ear and turned my pip-buck back into the Philadelphia broadcast. But instead of Red Eye, I got another iteration of March of the Parasprites. I looked
Is that
towards
just
my
Pinky's
friends.
polka?
Velvet
Like,
Remedy
that's
and
gotta be
Calamity were
annoying.
sitting together, occasionally casting furtive glances at the door to Blueberry Saber's office, as Velvet helped divorce Calamity from more of the egregious misconceptions about stable life that Tor had planted. I contemplated joining the conversation, but I had missed a fair bit of it, and both Poppy Seed and the guards seemed more interested in them than me. So instead I sat, growing restless, bored. I stared at the pictures on the walls, tattered and age-darkened oil paintings of buildings. I recognized one of them barely as the Red Racer factory. I got up and started to walk the hallway, giving the paintings a closer examination. There were pedestals as well, set at regular intervals, each holding a small architectural model. Most of the models had collapsed, overcome by the weight of at least 20 decades. But a few were still standing, mostly intact, an amazing testament to the model builder. When Stabletech built something, they built it to last. I was just about to pull the earbloom from my ear when the current song ended.
Except when it
Something
comes to
both
keeping
patriotic
ponies
sounding
alive.
Yet heavy on the use of the oboe.
They tend to
And
fail
Red Eye's
a
voice
lot
spoke
in that.
to my ear. My friends, let me share with you a secret, just between you and me. I was not always like this. No, once I was a young colt, irresponsible and carefree. I did not understand the need to toil, to labor, nor should I have, for I was but a child, and childhood is the time for innocence, for exploration, for happiness and growth. I was lucky, fortunate beyond my deserving, to be blessed with the safe places to roam, security from the fiends and the horrors of the equestrian wasteland, and companionship in the form of my beloved dog, Winter. Oh, the adventures we had. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? A time of peace and joy that I can return to in my mind at the end of the day after the equestrian wasteland has thrown the worst at me of its horrors and despair. Between the visions of my peaceful past and our gloriously bright future, I find the strength to go on, no matter how hard the path or how heavy the load. But my childhood, picturesque and ideal and safe, is that what your own children enjoy? Tell me, equestrian wasteland, how many of our children today are truly happy, truly carefree? Sadly, we both know the answer. None. Today, Equestria is a hard, miserable, unforgiving place. Our colts and fillies live with fear, violence, rape, and death. The bleak and poisoned world offers our children only meaningless struggle and, all too often, a cruel and terrifying end.
He's not wrong.
There is no joy out there. No hope.
Like, that's the worst part.
No
He's not
more.
wrong.
This ends here. This ends now. One day, yes, the new Equestria we are building will offer them the same utopian security that I once enjoyed. But we cannot wait for that while our children suffer today. The leaders of our past may have forgotten how each colt, each filly is to be cherished when they unleash their arrogant wrath upon our world. But we have lived through hell to know better, and we will not wait a single day. As those living within lands already being reclaimed know, our nation's young ones are, and have always been, my highest priority. All that we sacrifice,
Think
all
of
that
the
we do
children.
to give them a better place. And in the meantime, we strive to give them the safety and security that our hooves can offer. And more than that, dear friends, much more. We provide schools where they can learn, medical centers where they will obtain free treatment, the best medical care in all of Equestria, and homes where they can live together with other children, making friends, all under the watchful care of loving, approved mares and stallions. Soon, the armies of the Children of Unity will come to your town, not as an invading army, oh no, but as an army of engineers and teachers and doctors. They will rebuild your schools, establish hospitals that will provide the best care in this ruined and tortured nation, and bring to you the words of the goddess, so that you too may know unity. And once again, our children will be able to play freely. The door to Blueberry Saber's office opened. Steelhooves took a step out. Little Pip, could you come in here for a moment? Elder Blueberry Saber
shit.
was the first Steel Ranger I had actually laid eyes upon. She was a rather pretty, older mare. I suspected that, when she was closer to my age, or even Velvet's, she must have been quite cute. She had a pleasant blue coat, and her mane had once been a berry purple before it turned mostly silver-gray. There were still a few wisps of the original color. I couldn't see her cutie mark. Her robes concealed a modest portion of her body. Steelhooves guided me in, closing the door behind him with his metal-sheathed tail. Blueberry Saber stood in front of me beside a heavy iron table whose interlaced frontal design reminded me oddly of scaffolding.
Probably is
She had
scaffolding.
one hoof up on the table, although with a closer glance I could see that the hoof was actually not touching the metal surface. Trapped between the hoof and the desk was the round black ball of a memory orb. Little Pip, Steelhoof said, his voice oddly strained. I need you to look into that memory orb and tell me what's inside there. I looked at him, puzzled, then at the Steel Ranger Elder. She nodded with a smirk that looked ugly on what should have been a pretty face. All right, I said, approaching slowly. I was a little surprised at my own hesitation.
Why is it
Something
black?
in the room just felt off.
Ask
Still,
that.
I did
Why
as
is it
Steelhoof
black?
asked, lowering my horn towards the orb.
They're not
focusing.
supposed to be black, are they?
I felt the odd washing sensation as reality slipped. Part of me panicked, suddenly thinking that they were incapacitating me. A memory of my own, that of Velvet Remedy shooting me with my own dart gun, flashed through my head. And then, I was no longer with them. The first sense I gained was smell. Even before I could see the barn, I could smell the rich scent of hay, overlaid with other less pleasant earthy odors. Sight came next. I wanted to blink as dazzling sunlight, beautiful and pure, filtered into the barn through an open hayloft. Then came touch. First, the touch of the cloak I was wearing, a rough but not unpleasant cloth. Then, I felt odd. The body I was in was different, but I couldn't really put my hoof on how. I had been in earth ponies before. The lack of a horn was no longer startling to me. And the body was less alien than that of a horny male, much less than my exceptionally freaky experience as Spike. But I still felt somehow wrong, and it was like an itch that just wouldn't go away.
You're a zebra
My host
now.
was standing in a bed of hay, watching as two familiar mares walked into the barn. They ambled right past me without so much as a glance. Now what's this y'all wanted to talk about, Rarity? What did we need to hide out in the barn for? Well, the elegant white unicorn said, looking at her freckled friend with a frazzled blonde mane. Rainbow Dash said that the last week of the Summer Sun celebration she came to you, and you didn't mind. I wanted to snicker. Rarity had managed to strike a perfect tone between gossip and suggestiveness. Yet I could tell without a doubt that she was only playing on the orange mare with a 3-apple cutie mark. Call it intuition, but I just knew that Rarity only had eyes for the stallions, and that made Applejack's expression all the funnier. Oh hey no, Applejack nearly shouted, backpedaling. God dang it, not you too. Rainbow Dash was drunk. Again. And I told her. I really wished my host would laugh. Because it was hard to be in stitches when your body
You're
wouldn't
in a
cooperate.
dog, aren't you?
But in the very least, I could tell Applesnack that whatever he had been afraid I might find in here was just rubbish. Applejack regained her composure as Rarity fluttered her eyes but failed to stifle a ladylike snicker quite fast enough. Oh, for the lover! Applejack stomped. Did you drag me all the way back here just to mess with me? She put a hoof to her freckled face. Aw, hell. Did Rainbow Dash put you up to this? This one of her practical jokes, ain't it? Actually, well, yes, Rarity admitted. It was her idea. I knew it. Applejack huffed, stomping again. But I really do have something I need to talk to you about, the graceful unicorn said, abruptly turning quite serious. Applejack could tell the mood had changed. Fun, even that at her expense, was over. What is it? I've come across some new magic, Rarity said cautiously. Zebra magic. She stopped, measuring the country mare's reaction. You mean like the things Zakor used to brew?
No, that's alchemy.
Not exactly, no. Rarity lowered her voice. Have you ever heard of a soul jar?
Oh,
Applejack stared
Horcruxes!
at her purple-maned friend.
Fucking Voldemort!
No, and I ain't sure I want to. But Rarity wasn't ready to stop. A soul jar is an item. It can be any item, really. It doesn't have to be a jar that you put a soul into.
Uh-huh.
Applejack looked taken aback, but the unicorn continued. It was as if, now that she had started talking, she just couldn't stop until it was all out. Putting a soul into a soul jar changes the object. It becomes effectively indestructible, for one.
Cool.
And you can
Phylactery.
use the soul to hang other enchantments on. The unicorn
Phylactery.
stopped at a thought, then added. It becomes a foundation, not unlike a megaspell framework, I suppose. Rarity? Applejack gasped. What the hell has gotten into you, girl? Where'd you even get this magic? This is... The orange mare's voice lowered to a hiss. This is necromancy.
Yeah!
Rarity looked to her friend and nodded, her own eyes wide. I know. Then, in answer. It's from a zebra book called the Black Book.
Oh, that's so
Again,
cool.
she paused, thinking. Well, the Black Book of... something I can't pronounce. A name, but it doesn't have vowels in places it ought to. It has all manner of extremely icky things in it. Soul
Cthulhu!
jars, bypass spells, magic to tear souls apart. With each
Can you
word,
raise the dead?
Applejack's expression became more horrified. Rarity seemed not to quite notice. She gave a smirk like she was revealing a particularly juicy bit of gossip. If you buy into the more colorful background of the book, they say that it was written by a mad zebra alchemist who communicated with the stars through dreams.
Cthulhu!
Who was
It's
they?
the Necronomicon!
Applejack asked, but never got an answer. Now, I know all of this is perfectly dreadful, and my first instinct was to burn the book and be rid of it, Rarity said. For the first time since the conversation turned dire, Applejack looked a little relieved. That relief was short-lived.
Oh.
But the top magician in my ministry says that he ought to be able to take that soul-shredding magic and rework it, turning it into a precision spell that will allow him to cut off just a small portion of a pony's soul, enough to create a soul jar without doing any real damage to the subject of the spell.
Okay, let's get real. We all know the idea of cutting off a piece of your soul is probably not a good fucking idea. It's probably not. Like, instead of removing your whole soul, you're just cutting it into fucking pieces. Ooh, that's bad.
And why would you
stupid.
want to do that? Think of it, Applejack. What soldier wouldn't be willing to give up just a small bit of her soul to be put into her own armor, making it completely impervious to any bullet, any weapon?
This raises a question. What if the pony dies? Does the soul try to reconnect with itself? Does it become a possessed suit of armor? Not animated, just possessed, being forced to languish there for eternity in torture. I mean, what if without the whole soul, it can't move on? Like, no Tartarus, no Elysium, no Underworld. You're just permanently stuck in this world, forced to watch as eons pass by, never moving on because you decide to put a piece of your soul in a fucking suit of armor that hasn't been destroyed yet. There's so many fucking things wrong with this. There's so many ways this could go wrong. You could be condemning the soldiers of your nation to eternal torment. Not even Tartarus, but just boredom. And that hell. Hell isn't torture. Hell is repetition. Hell is boredom. That's hell. So, oh god, this is bad. This
Rarity
is bad.
was positively glowing in the rapture of her idea.
Hit her!
And
Hit
it
her!
doesn't have to be those ugly metal things that your ministry has
Hit
been
her!
working on. We could make it perfect, impenetrable armor out of dresses. Beautiful dresses. Applejack was reeling. And not only would our soldiers look absolutely fabulous, and be immune to the weapons of our enemy, Rarity continued, they wouldn't be weighed down, encumbered. Until now, armored barding has always come at the price of mobility, but now... Rarity. The unicorn stopped, putting her hooves on Applejack's shoulders. Applejack, just think, none of our family would have to die in battle anymore. If Big Macintosh had... No! Rarity dropped back, stunned by Applejack's sudden outburst. But the orange pony wasn't done. She advanced on her friend, jabbing at her breast.
Yeah!
Don't you dare bring my brother into this blackness! Rarity gasped, eyes wide. This talk stops now, Applejack demanded. I don't want to hear another word. This is... vile. No soldier would give up what you're suggesting, and even if they were willing, how could we let them? Some prices are just too high. Don't you think, if there weren't horrific consequences to playing with these things, we'd already be facing zebras with impenetrable armor? Or bullets that could just shoot through anything? Or worse? Rarity stopped. She turned her gaze away from Applejack, a flush of embarrassment on her cheeks. Oh, you're so right. I don't know what I was thinking. Applejack let out a sigh of deep relief. It's okay, Sugar Cube. You got wrapped up in a notion and didn't really think it through.
That's the perfect argument to that idea. If it really worked, why aren't our enemies doing it? There you go. That perfect argument.
Happens to all of us now and again. The unicorn looked up to Applejack, smiling weakly.
Oh god damn it. Rarity did it anyways, didn't she? And it had horrible consequences.
Well then, I'm lucky I have a good friend who can slap me out of it. Applejack gave a chuckle. No harm done then. Now I want you to go back to Canterlot and continue working on your designs. You have a heap of work on your plate as is, and neither of us will mention this ever again. Like it never happened, Rarity said, genuine thankfulness in her voice. Like it never happened, Applejack agreed. Rarity and Applejack embraced each other in a hug. Then the unicorn slipped elegantly away and back to the barn door. Hey, Applejack called out. Her friend stopped, looking back. "And when you get back, burn that book. Or better yet, have somebody else do it for you," the orange pony suggested. "I get the suspicion that even reading it was messing with your head."
It's
Rarity
like
looked at
that one
her through a chain of
episode.
thought, then nodded. "Yes, I do think you're quite right, Applejack." She gave a ladylike frown. "That book is dangerous." Applejack watched Rarity push the barn door open with a hoof and walk out. Finally, my host moved, stepping lightly so as not to make any noise, following the beautiful white unicorn. "Hey!" Applejack called again, galloping past me fast enough to make my cloak flutter. She stopped at the door, calling out, "And for whatever nonsense Rainbow Dash put you up to, that hug does not count."
God.
I was back. Back in my own body, and back in the presence of Steelhooves and Blueberry Saber, both high-ranking members of the Steel Rangers. The wearers of those ugly metal things Applejack had gone ahead and designed. Gears were starting to move in my head again. The pony in my brain was busy, shoveling puzzle pieces into place. And the first one that clicked was the memory of Applejack and Rarity talking in Spike's memory. "I sure hope this ain't nothing to do with that thing we never talked about." "Oh no, darling, I gave that project up ages ago." Steelhooves interrupted my mental puzzle solving with an uncharacteristic tone. "Well, what was the memory?" I blinked. I was no longer thinking that the issue was Applejack's fidelity, which should never have been in the question. But I was at a loss as for what had Steelhooves on edge. Clearly, Applejack had talked her friend away from that horrifying course. Otherwise,
did
such
she?
perfect armors would still be around today.
You don't know? Oh.
It was a conversation, I offered, my brain working to figure out how to pull the information I wanted out of them. Between the mayors of the Ministry of Technology and the Ministry of Image. I wondered if I should have been calling it the Ministry of Wartime Technology, but it was too late to change my wording. It was a long conversation about several things, most of them trivial, I said, not exactly dishonestly. "What specifically were you looking for?" Steelhooves shook his head. "Telling you would bias the answer." Elder Blueberry Saber snorted. "Well, if you won't, I have no problem telling her." The elderly mayor smiled at me. "Tell him that this memory proves the values of the Ministry Mayor he so stubbornly clings to are a fiction. This memory proves that she didn't care about the lives of the soldiers, but only about advancing her own designs. And when some other pony came up with a much, much better armor design, she made sure it never saw the light of day." Oh, that was what this was about.
Really?
I blinked,
Fucking nerds.
feeling angry now. That's what this was about? Of all the much, much worse things in that memory, the Elder of the Steel Rangers was focused on this? I about spit my bit. Standing up as tall as my little frame would allow, I huffed. "How about I tell you what I didn't see in that memory?" Blueberry Saber blinked in response. Steelhooves took a tentative step towards me.
Kick
What
her
I didn't
shit!
see was my host. From the blank look in the Elder's eyes, I realized I was using terms I had come up with myself. I had no idea what the proper term for memory's host was. Not that it mattered. The Elder was an Earth pony. She couldn't see into a memory orb without a recollector anyway. It seemed increasingly likely that she had never actually seen the memory herself, or that she had many years ago and lacked a clear recollection of its contents. So I tried again, keeping my anger at this nonsense tightly under control. "I didn't see the pony whose memory it was, not even a forehoof. And while it's not entirely unusual, I'm quite certain that the two Ministry Mayors couldn't see her either. I don't think they would have had that conversation if they knew somebody else was present." Both the Elder and Steelhooves were still for at least a moment, actually paying attention. What I saw in there was that some pony was spying on the Ministry Mayors. Invisible. I remembered the itchy strangeness.
Stealth
And
suit!
I don't think it was even a pony. I'm pretty sure I just shared the memory of a zebra. Another puzzle piece slotted into my head. I lifted my pip-buck, saying, "I found this in the rubble of a recruitment center out near the Shattered Hoof facility." I played back the old recording, removing the earbloom attachment so both of them could hear. "I'm sending you one of the devices recovered from Shattered Hoof Ridge. Intelligence suggests that the zebras have developed invisibility spell fetishes. but this looks like something designed by the Ministry of Magic. It's even Pip-Buck compatible. I hate to say it, but it looks like we've got traitors in our midst. If some pony in the MAS is leaking arcane technology to the zebras, the princess will need to take action. What followed the recording was much discussion, but in the end, the only thing resolved was that I had gotten at least a little bit of the Elder's trust while managing to sidetrack both of them from their earlier argument. It was over an hour later when Elder Blueberry Saber got up and trotted to the window, staring out at an angry red glow coming from the walled-off portion of Philadelphia. "If you're going in there, you won't be able to do it like that," she said. "Not with armor and an arsenal and a squad of companions." "Why not?" I asked. "I'm not worried about getting past the wall. I can just float us over when there's a gap in the patrols." That was, at least, my plan. "Because," Blueberry Saber turned to me, "you'll never get close to Red Eye that way. He's always protected. In the very least by a flock of griffins, if not by a wing of those damned alicorns. The first sign of trouble, and he'll hop his sky chariot and leave the city. You'll lose any chance you have of taking him down before you even know it." Damn. I was confident of being able to sneak close until she mentioned the alicorns. I should have figured this couldn't be easy. But I was damned if I would just give up and go home. Not after the fresh reminder of what these slavers were doing to innocent ponies. "I can help you," the Elder offered, "if you agree to help me in return." Oh, this was going to be one of those days. The Elder laid it out for me. She could get me and maybe one of my companions into the walled section of the city, stripped of our possessions and dressed in the rags of slaves. I'd have to work my way to him from there, preferably by gaining his trust rather than by body count. The latter method was likely to backfire for the same reason a covert assault would. "You may have more to fear from the inmates than the guards," Blueberry Saber noted. "Red Eye's armies have started rounding up raiders and putting them to work as slavers along with the rest. Some of the ponies you'll be stuck with in there are exceptionally nasty refuse."
See, that's why you should have done from the beginning. Instead of just using, normal, like, civvies. I know no one's really a civilian in the wasteland, but instead of just rounding up normal, good ponies, you should just start rounding up the raiders and using them as slaves. No one would care. No one would care. And it'd be taking a problem and using it as a resource to use. See? The hell, guys.
This plan just kept getting better and better. "And what do you want from me in return?" I asked finally. "Two things." Blueberry Saber walked around the office as she spoke. "First, Red Eye has managed to develop some sort of engine fueled by radiation. He's been having the slaves mine the Philadelphia crater itself for irradiated debris, which he can turn into usable energy to run his factories." Steelhouse nickered. "Well, that's a game changer." Red Eye's claims of building a new Equestria, at least on an infrastructural level, suddenly gained a lot more authenticity. "Indeed," Blueberry Saber agreed. She turned on me. "I want the plans for that engine." Okay, plans for a radiation engine. That was one. "And number two?" The Steel Ranger Elder frowned even more deeply. "Our intelligence states that Red Eye has gotten a hold of research into something called a bypass spell." I felt a jolt. I had heard of that sort of magic not 2 hours ago, and not in pleasant context. "I want you to find his research on bypass spells. Confiscate what you can. Destroy the rest." The Elder stomped both of her forehoofs. "Thoroughly obliterate it." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when is the Ministry of Wartime Technology interested in spell research?" Steelhoof stepped in. "Since it's a matter of survival," he explained. "The Zebras created bypass enchantments midway through the war. A bypass augments another magical effect, allowing it to ignore one specific type of things. The Zebras, for instance, used it to create balefire bursts, the much smaller version of the megaspell you are familiar with.
Mini nukes.
With the Zebra bypass. With that, a Zebra could trot into an area crowded with ponies, set off the blast, and kill every pony within a block or two without being harmed herself." The mental image of an invisible zebra walking into a crowded stable atrium during one of Velvet Remedy's performances suddenly lodged in my mind and refused to leave. The unicorns of the Ministry of Arcane Sciences failed to crack the enchantment before the mega spells fell, Blueberry Saber informed me. But it's impossible to know how close they were.
And we're ending it here. See you in a little